We all make trash, right? It's just a part of life. But have you ever really stopped to think about what happens to it after it leaves our curb? Well, we're going to go deep into the world of waste management and see how that everyday trash can become a serious threat to the environment. Let's get into it.
Okay, to get a grip on the sheer scale of this, just look at this number, 68.8 million tons. That's how much solid waste was generated in India's cities way back in 2008. Now get this, in 1947, that number was just 6 million tons. That is an absolutely insane jump. But here's the real kicker. Buried inside that mountain of trash is something far more dangerous than just old pizza boxes and banana peels. Exactly. Because hidden in all that waste is stuff that's way more problematic than just household scraps. We're talking about waste that poses a direct threat to our health, to the entire planet. So, what happens when our trash crosses that line and goes from being just garbage to being genuinely dangerous?
Well, it's time to meet the main villain of our story, hazardous waste. And no, this isn't about your kitchen bin overflowing. This is a whole other level. This is the kind of stuff that needs its own special playbook, a very specific management plan. Because when you're dealing with hazardous waste, getting it wrong has some pretty severe consequences.
So what exactly is it? Well, hazardous waste is pretty much any chemical byproduct. Doesn't matter if it comes from a giant factory or from that old can of paint under your sink, that can harm us or the environment if you don't handle it just right. And we're not just talking about industrial sludge here. We're talking about everyday things like old batteries, pesticides, and even some waste from hospitals.
Okay, this is a really important distinction. We tend to use the words toxic and hazardous like they're the same thing, but they're not. Think of it like this. Hazardous is the big umbrella term. Something is hazardous if it can hurt you in any number of ways. Maybe it can catch fire, explode, or corrode metal. Toxic, on the other hand, is just one specific way something can be hazardous, by poisoning you. So remember, all toxic waste is hazardous, but not all hazardous waste is toxic.
So, this breaks it down even more. There are basically 5 official traits that will land a substance in the hazardous club. Ignitability, it catches fire easily. Corrosiveness, like a strong acid that can eat right through things. Reactivity, this is the stuff that can go boom if it gets wet or mishandled. Radioactivity, that one's pretty self-explanatory. And finally, toxicity, the one we're all familiar with. It can poison you, cause disease or cancer.
So, how in the world do you deal with something so dangerous? Thankfully, there is a master plan. It's a modern framework for managing this stuff, kind of like a multi-layered defense system that's designed to keep us all safe. Let's see how it works. The strategy really comes down to 4 core steps, and the order is absolutely critical. First, and most importantly, just make less of the stuff in the first place. Stop the problem before it even starts. Second, recycle everything you can. Third, treat what's left over to make it less harmful. And only then, as a final, last resort, do you dispose of what's left in a safe way.
Right. That first step, waste minimization, is the golden rule. The absolute best way to manage hazardous waste is to not create it at all. Industries can do this by changing their processes to be more efficient, by concentrating the waste to reduce how much there is, or by carefully separating the dangerous stuff from the harmless stuff right at the source. Step 2 is recycling. And this is where it gets pretty cool, actually, because some hazardous waste can be turned back into a valuable resource. Take scrap metal, for instance. It can be melted down and turned into brand new products. This isn't just great because it keeps hazardous materials out of landfills. It also conserves our natural resources and saves a ton of energy. It's a real win-win. After we've minimized and recycled, we have to treat what's left. And this quote really gets to the heart of it. The waste that's still around has to be detoxified and neutralized. The whole goal here is to use science, chemistry, biology, you name it, to transform the dangerous waste into something harmless before it takes its final journey. And that brings us to the end of the line. After all the other steps are done, the leftover treated waste has to go somewhere. This is its final destination, and it's maybe the most critical part of this whole process. So there are basically 4 main ways to get rid of it for good. The most common one is a landfill. Then there's incineration, which is just a fancy way of saying it's burned at extremely high temperatures. There's also dumping it at sea, which thankfully is heavily regulated now and pretty rare for hazardous stuff. And finally, for the absolute most dangerous materials like radioactive waste, there's underground disposal. Now, when we say landfill, I don't want you to picture just a big messy dump. The ideal, what we're aiming for, is a sanitary landfill. It's a carefully engineered structure with these thick, non-porous liners. These liners are everything. They're the barrier that stops any hazardous liquids, this toxic sludge they call leachate, from seeping into the soil and our groundwater. When the system works, it's like a fortress protecting our environment.
But what happens when that fortress is never built? What happens when the master plan is just thrown out the window? Well, that's when we have to face the devastating reality of improper disposal. That's when the fortress is breached.
And unfortunately, this stuff is all too common. Hazardous waste gets mixed in with regular city trash, it gets dumped on riverbanks, it's burned in open pits, or just tossed into low-lying areas. Every single one of these is a catastrophic failure of the system that's supposed to be keeping us safe.
And this is the direct result of that failure. Without the protection of a proper landfill, all those hazardous materials are just out in the open. Rain washes through the waste, picks up all those poisons, and carries them deep into the ground. It directly contaminates the soil and the groundwater that we rely on for drinking, for farming, for everything.
Let's be crystal clear here. The single biggest danger of getting waste management wrong is poisoning our soil and our water. Once these vital resources are contaminated, it's not just some abstract environmental issue anymore. It becomes a direct and immediate threat to our own health.
And here's exactly how that threat gets to us. These poisons can invade our bodies in so many ways. We can drink contaminated water. We can breathe in contaminants from the steam in a hot shower. We can absorb them through our skin when we wash. We can eat them in food that comes from exposed plants or animals. We can even absorb them just by touching contaminated soil. It's literally an invasion from all sides.
So in the end, protecting our environment and our own health really depends on this carefully designed system. It's like a chain, from making less waste at the start all the way to its final safe disposal. And every single link matters. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. The system is designed to protect us, but it's only as strong as its weakest link. So what happens when we're the ones breaking it?